Hello, James.
Hey, how's it going?
What's going on, dude?
I'm sitting here trying my damnedest to copy this link so that I can share it to my page, but it's just defeating me.
It's all good. Don't worry about it. We shared it all over the goddamn place. So, how you doing, man? I know you're a busy fucking guy, man. You got a lot of stuff that you're into, man. Shit.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I got a lot going on, but that's part of the course, man. You know?
Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, we just got done blasting one of my favorites, Obituary, Infected and Cause of Death from that record. Man, you know, I just got to say, man, like little tiny Zach Moonshine way back in the fucking in the early 90s when I first heard that shit, man, I was like, what the fuck is this, man? But those solos that you did on that record really, to me, were what set the whole thing apart, man.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. You know, obviously the tunes had to be there, or you know, no solos would have helped it. You know, so you know, thankfully for me and the guys, it was a really, you know, killer record. You know, solos or no, you know, and without solos, it still would have been a really, you know, good record, a really great record. So, you know, I just came in and, you know, put my icing on the cake, really, you know, to use a bit of a tired metaphor, but, you know.
Yeah. How did that whole thing come about? Like, and I've always wondered, like, why weren't you on the other records? Like, what happened with all that?
Well, I mean, I didn't really know the guys when they did Slowly Rerot. You know, I was the first guitarist to actually tour with them, so I actually did tour in support of that record. The band never really kicked off their touring career until Cause of Death was already in the can, you know, and recorded.
Yeah. And
so the very first tour I did with them, you know, we were anticipating the release of Cause of Death, but you know, really, you know, and we were playing material from it, but, you know, no one had heard that stuff, so I think we were leaning a little heavier on the Slowly Rerot stuff. I just didn't know the guys, and I was, you know, doing other things at that point in my life. But, you know, I just didn't move on with them primarily because we were just, you know, we were just in different places in our lives. They were still sort of reeling from Alan having left. He was their friend, and they did not want him to leave when he left. So when I first showed up to even talk with them about, you know, taking the position that had, you know, suddenly become open right as they were going into the studio, they told me at that point that, like, you know, we didn't fire Alan. We didn't want him to leave. You know, he's our friend. He built this with us from the ground up. So, you know, at some point, if he wants to come back, we'll probably take him. So I kind of knew it was something that was, you know, on the horizon because, you know, as I recall, Alan left because he, you know, he was starting a family. You know, his girlfriend was pregnant, and he was going to be having a kid. And, you know, like I said, Obituary hadn't even started a touring career yet, so it was still unknown whether, you know, this dog was going to hunt or not. You know what I mean? And it was just. He was facing an uncertain future. He didn't know whether he'd be able to make money, you know, touring around the world and playing death metal. So he, you know, he made the choice that he, I guess, felt he had to make for his family at the time to be able to have a, you know, full-time job and, you know, support his child. So it was an admirable thing he did, but, you know, it was pretty clear after I was in the band for just a little while, you know, after we did the record and it came out and we started touring, that it was going to be a successful venture, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it became evident to him as well, and he kind of started regretting his choices, I believe, and so, you know, he started eventually, reaching out to the guys and, wanting to know if there was any possibility he could come back. And like I said, they had told me all along that, yeah, sure, he could, And so that's probably the biggest overriding reason. A secondary reason would really just kind of be that we were, they're all great guys, and but we were, especially at that point in our lives, we were very different types of people, They were sort of, Florida boys, what we call good old boys around here, they were very much of that type. I wasn't even really from here, I had just, not very long prior, come from living for 6 years in Europe, and I had a whole different vibe than them. I had a whole different way of approaching things and doing things, and so, I was always sort of the odd man out in that regard,
I totally understand what you're talking about, man. My family traveled a lot when I was young, and I grew up in parts of Europe in the early 80s myself. So when I came over to the States, there was definitely a weird. There was always a weird thing. I always remember just being kind of like the weird kid in the school because, my mom thought oh, you're going to be cultured, all this different stuff. But the other kids didn't really see it that way. It was sort of like, he's a fucking weirdo because he's from a different place, man.
Yeah. Well, so, I had gotten all of my partying out in high school. I kind of, I partook of, the partying as, as they, you could call it, I suppose. Common to call it that. I got that out of my system in high school, and I sort of decided as I was leaving high school that I wanted to take pursuing music very seriously, and that aspect of what had been my lifestyle throughout high school, especially living in Germany, wasn't something I wanted to continue outside of high school, and so I never really, I never really was super into it. I just, I hung out, partied with my friends. We did whatever. We smoked our little weed. We smoked our hash. Because in Germany it was actually easier to get that, and at that time, and I got it out of my system. And by the time I hooked up with Obituary, I wasn't a teetotaler. I drank a little, but I didn't do anything else. I didn't have any other, sort of thing that they were still into that. I don't know whether they are these days. I have no idea what, where they're at in their lives at this point. They're all great guys. I know that. And,
yeah.
And they were great guys then. And, but I was maybe at that point in time, a little bit uptight about it. I wasn't really into it, and I didn't like it.
I hear you.
Really necessarily being shoved down my throat, So it made me.
So
I was a little less mature about stuff like that. I never really made a or anything like that, but it sort of set me aside and made me, it's just another thing that sort of otherized me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so
sort of put me in a different camp than them,
So they were pretty wild back then, huh?
No, nothing crazy, Yeah. I guess it's not. It's practically legal here now, So, like I said, I don't know what they do. I'm not trying to speak for them or cause them any issues in their lives. But at the time, I think everyone pretty well knew that they were sort of big weed smokers, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
And it used to. I would say it was kind of a point of friction. Not that we ever argued about it, because I didn't. But it sort of made me stand out a little as a bit different from them, and perhaps as a little bit more uptight than them, because I didn't, you know, I didn't have that attitude, you know.
Yeah, I hear
like, I'm chill, you know, smoke a dude, whatever, you know. I was a very different person at that time, you know. I was focused on music. I was very serious about guitar, and I wanted to tour, and I wanted to have a professional career, and I wanted to do it, you know, in a different way than they did. And they obviously did stuff then. Here they are, how many years later, and they still have a killer career raging, you know? So, you know, it was just, I mean, you asked why I left, and these are the only things I can really think of, is that, you know, you know, Alan always wanted to come back, you know, or they always wanted Alan to come back, rather, so that when he came around to that, they were open to it. And just the fact, you know, he was their buddy, you know, he you know, they grew up doing everything together, including making the band, and you know, the only thing they hadn't done together yet is tour. And so, they told me they'd probably jump at it if he wanted back, and they did. And I can't really blame them, because, you know, I was just a different, you know, I was cut from a different cloth. You know, we were, you know, very different. But, you know, when I was young, and I was, you know, very driven, and not to say they weren't, it was just we had different styles of going about it.
Hey, James, your phone's kind of cutting in and out, man. I'm not sure if...
Okay, I'll tell you what, I will get rid of the... I'll get rid of the AirPods. How about that? All right, let's see how that works out.
Yeah, I can hear you good now. Well, I was going to say, man, I think it worked out fine. You know, I mean, you've had a hell of a career, dude. Looking at your fucking resume here, man, you've played in a bunch of fucking different bands, man. You've been on a bunch of records that some of which are my favorites, man. You know, like, but I mean, fucking Death, dude, and Cancer. I mean, shit, man. Tell us about. Can you give us a brief history, like a rundown of how you got into music and what started your path on guitar playing?
Well, you know, I would definitely say that it started in Germany. You know, just being a young kid wanting to play guitar. And is this better audio, by the way?
Yeah, it sounds great right now.
Okay, great. You know, it started, you know, while I was living in Germany, and I wanted to play guitar, but I didn't have one. And, you know, I didn't, you know, initially have a means of getting one, because I was just a kid, you know, I was about 8, 9, you know, years old. And, you know, my dad had one, but he kept it in the closet, and I wasn't technically allowed to touch it. I say technically because, you know, occasionally he brought it out and would show me, like, the, you know, the odd, you know, we call them cowboy chords, you know, the basic open chord positions. He showed me a handful of those and some stuff like that, and so he taught me a little bit. I would say by the time I was like 11 or 12, I had learned a handful of chords, and it could, you know, when he let me play his guitar, I would practice them and whatnot, but you know, also, you know, whenever he was gone, you know, I knew his schedule, and we lived on the 3rd floor of an apartment building, so I knew from the time I saw his truck pull down our lane how much time I had. I had time to, you know, stick the guitar away. So I would take it out, you know, sometimes when he was gone and play, but I never really got to be serious until I was about 16, probably closer to 17, when I was able to take advantage of, you know, living in Germany. There was something called the Department of Defense Dependent Youth Employment Program. And, you know, I think as of a certain age, like 15 or something like that, it was dependent youth, which is what we were called. Our parents were in the military or worked for the Department of Defense as civilian employees, one or the other. And you could go down and apply for this program on any military base and go fill out the paperwork. And you could be given a job for the summer, you know, working on a military base. And so I did that, and got me a summer job at the Gießen Army base, working at the non-commissioned officers club under a German national who worked as the main maintenance man named Franz. And Franz was my boss actually 2 summers in a row, and I worked and socked my money away and ran down to at the end of it all, when I was very close to my 17th birthday, I think, down to a little German music store in the city of Gießen, and purchased my first guitar, my first real good electric guitar that actually worked and could, my aunt had given me a guitar, but it was crap. But then again, of course, I very much appreciated it at the time. It was the only thing I had, and I got a lot of use out of it. But it wouldn't even really tune or intonate properly. So that was my first one. I went and earned it myself, and that's how I started in Germany. And mostly just by working and earning the money to buy my own guitar, and then setting about just, learning as many riffs and licks and, solos by other people that I could.
What was that first guitar?
That first electric that I bought with my own money that actually would play was I still remember this to this day, an Aria Pro 2 XX Deluxe Flying V. Nice. Black flying V with a yellow lightning bolt going across it diagonally, across the whole body. And I think I had gold hardware and a maple fretboard. And I got some mileage out of that guitar. I didn't keep it that long. I only kept, I probably had it for less than a year, but before I traded it. But then went to I think a BC Rich Mockingbird or a Fender Squier Stratocaster, one or the other. I don't remember, but which one came first. But yeah, that was it. That's what it was. Aria Pro 2 XX Deluxe Flying V.
Hell yeah, man! Hell yeah. Some of the old pictures that I've seen of you playing a Warlock too.
Those were Obituary days, and I think I used it I used it when I did the touring that I did with Cancer.
Hell yeah, man. Well, as far as like influences and stuff, man, like, can you tell us what were some of the guitar players and bands that you were listening to when you were young that influenced you and made you want to play?
No, man, if you've ever talked to any death metal or thrash metal or just metal musician in general of my general generation, Gen X, it's all the usual suspects, man. Started with Ace Frehley and ended up evolving, in like Angus Young and stuff like that, and Tony Iommi and KK Downing and Glenn Tipton and stuff like that, and Randy Rhoads, of course.
Hell yeah.
Big time Randy Rhoads, yeah.
Hell yeah,
so
man.
Those were the ones, and then then it just developed from there. I started getting into and stuff like Michael Schenker and Hendrix and stuff like that, Frank Marino and et cetera, et cetera. But then come along the early 80s, I started really getting into the shredders. Start kicking off with Yngwie. I mean, I don't play like that. I never really tried to follow the Yngwie path, but
I don't think anybody can play like Yngwie, man. He's on his own.
Man, I know a few guys who, when they play you'd almost swear it was Yngwie, but that's at the cost of them having their own identity, unfortunately. But
yeah,
and I wouldn't say that I figured it out, but it just was the result of me trying to copy all the people that I liked, which was, like I said, everything from Ace Frehley up to people like Vinnie Moore and Tony McAlpine and Paul Gilbert and John Petrucci and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in fact, by the time I ever heard John Petrucci, I had already started my career, so I was already starting to develop my own sound before I ever heard some of those later guys. So I don't know if I could really count them as influences, but I did strive to try to play in that kind of lane, but try as I might, I really only could ever sound like me. I've never been very successful at sounding like anybody else. And, to the extent that it frustrated me back in the day, I'm very grateful for that fact these days, and have been for many years.
Yeah, well, you definitely have your own sound, man, and that's cool, dude. Like, it's definitely cool to have your own fucking thing, and I mean, when you're listening to, from a listener's perspective, when you're listening to a record that you're playing on, you can definitely hear the style and you're playing like just how it is, man. It stands out.
Right on, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, dude. Well, I gotta ask you, man, what was it like playing with Death, man? Fucking Chuck, dude.
It was a variety of experiences. Certainly right off the bat, it was just super cool. It felt like a puzzle piece, and everything was very comfortable. It worked out freaking great. I had no trouble learning those tunes. And once I got the gig and we were, in the rehearsal space in Altamont Springs, writing the record, that came easy to me as well. My contributions to the record, I didn't even think about them. They just came out of me, and that's the way it seemed like it was for all the other guys, with Chuck and even, Terry, who wrote a number of riffs and whatnot for the album as well.
Terry Butler?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Yeah. Terry threw down riffs, and we all were, tossing in our ideas, and it just worked. So it was very easy. So that, that part and that time of playing with Death was really, really good. It was. Sorry about the noise in the background. It's a cat having a little bit of fun, tearing up the place.
Yeah. Yeah, Terry Butler's fucking awesome, dude. I've had him on the show before and talked to him, man. He's a fucking, like, his low end is like no.
That's a rock solid dude right there,
Yeah. I've seen him live a bunch of times with 6 Feet Under back in the day, man. Fuck, dude, like that, just fucking thunderous, man, like insane.
Oh yeah. I just in recent years, I had the occasion to play a couple shows with him. We did the Living Monstrosity shows about 3 years ago now, and he just came, he brought it. He showed up and he had the songs down. He was, he was rock solid, and he always has a great demeanor. Terry is very calm and he's calming. It's always good to have those kind of people on stage that you can rely on, and Terry's definitely that. Just a great player and a solid dude.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Well, what about Testament, man? How did that happen?
Well, that sort of skips the whole entire section, which is what I did right after Obituary, which is I formed my own band, Disincarnate, and while working on that, I did a bunch of fill-in stuff, including appearing on an album and doing a couple of tours with the English band Cancer. But I had let the Cancer guys know that I had done the last that I could with them, because I needed to get my Disincarnate thing going, and did that. We signed to Roadrunner Records, and finished writing the record, recorded it, and went out on tour. And it was just a very, very, very tough time for death metal, especially if you were signed to Roadrunner at that time, because grunge was really hitting hard in the early '90s. Yeah. And a lot of bands, a lot of the death metal bands, and bands that we were on the label with, were getting dropped. And so we went out and did this tour, and it was a really tough time. There was a lot of problems with the tour in terms of just finances, being able to pull it off. We did it though, but when at the end of it, and I started talking to Roadrunner about another, the next record, it was all of a sudden like, wait a minute, I think we had a record deal. We had I knew it was an option, but right away, by the second record, they were all like, well, we're not, things are changing. We don't, we're signing more, grunge and stuff like that, and alternative stuff, and, so, yeah, maybe we're probably going to have to hear a demo, They wanted to hear where the music was going, and they were very particular, certain aspects, like, they wanted to hear what the vocals were going to be like, they wanted to hear what the songs were going to be like, so we were looking at having to make a demo again to, rather than just moving on to our second record. And it was very discouraging, and a couple of the guys were just like, man, they were at the age where it was like, go to college or commit, to music. And at the time, they decided to go to college. Now, that's what they decided to do. I don't think either one of them that left for that reason actually ended up doing it at that time anyway. But it put the band in a very tenuous position, whether we were even going to continue as a band. We didn't know for sure whether we were going to have a record deal for a second record. We had just come off a really rough tour, financially and whatnot, and it kind of put the fear in my younger guys. And I had chosen younger guys because I wanted guys that would be able to tour and stuff without a lot of commitments and without having to be guaranteed a crap load of money to cover like a mortgage and car payments and stuff back home, guys. So I picked young guys that were still living at home with their parents, 18, 19 years old. And it kind of bit me in the ass because they kind of got scared, and sort of backed away from it at the time. So I'm sitting there. I ended up having to give up my apartment. I had lost my job because I had gone over to to England to record the Disincarnate album, and so here I am, back in Florida, no job, a stalled new band, and wondering what the hell I was going to do when, the fateful phone call came in, and it was this guy named Mike Gitter, who I knew from being a journalist. He had worked for like Metal Maniacs and Metal Mania and, I think Kerrang, whatever. He was like a journalist, and he wrote for a few different magazines. And he had interviewed us, and he had interviewed me in both Death and Obituary as well. So I thought he was calling me for an interview, and I was like, hey, what's up, Mike? I don't really have anything going on right now. We haven't even started work on a second record. Don't know if it's going to happen. And he goes, no, I don't. I have a new gig. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, I figured, hey, he's just calling me to tell me about his new gig. And he told me he was working as A&R at Atlantic Records. And then he went on to tell me that one of the bands he represented was Testament. And I was like, hey, that's really cool. I love Testament. And he goes, well, how would you feel about playing in Testament? And I was like, I feel pretty good about that, so.
Right.
Alex had just left, and, they had I think they had Glenn Alwise sort of temporarily filling in, but they wanted to find a permanent, guy, and Mike had recommended me because he knew, he knew Roadrunner Records, he knew Monty, he ended up working for them for many years, but at that time he was working at Atlantic, and probably Monty had told him he didn't know whether they were even going to pick us up for another record. So he thought of me for the gig and put me in contact with Eric, and it just sort of flowed from there. So that's how it happened. I was sitting in Florida wondering, how am I going to get, and I would have figured it out. I would have kept Disincarnate going. But when the opportunity to join Testament landed in my lap, this is one of my favorite thrash bands. I wasn't about to walk away from that, given the sort of dicey situation that I was in, with my own band at the time.
I thought it was cool too. Like at that time, Testament was really fucking leaning heavy into like going into death metal territory too, man. Like they were fucking, those albums that you played on were fucking brutal, man.
Well, you have to understand that I didn't have that knowledge to go on when I signed up with them, because the most recent record they had done when I, went out and auditioned was probably their most commercial that they had ever done, which was The Ritual.
Yeah.
And so it really had not taken that turn, gone down that left-hand path, but fortunately they did, and I think it wasn't so much that because I joined they went that way. They were looking to go heavier. They just didn't maybe necessarily know exactly what it was going to be, but they were looking to go heavier, and so I was a good choice in light of that, And I showed that I could play Alex's stuff, and most importantly, what really sort of what even got me the actual audition was, I got on the phone, I think later that day that I spoke with Mike Gitter, I got on the phone with Eric Peterson. He called me up and asked me, a bunch of questions, wanted to know if I could play Alex's solos. And now at this point in my life, I had never learned a single Alex Kolnick solo. I was a fan of the band, and so I was familiar with what he played like, and I had a very high opinion of him as a player, and I thought his stuff was great. But I didn't know whether or not I could play it. I had no idea. But when Eric asked me if I could play it, I was like, yeah, yeah, I can play that. So fortunately, I could. It turns out that I could. So because I had to learn a bunch of them in a short period of time. But what really got me the audition was he was like, okay, well, we're writing this new song right now, and I'm going to send you. Do you have a 4-track, like a recorder? And I was like, yeah. Turns out I had the exact same 4-track recorder that he had. Little 4-track cassette decks. That's what we had back in the day, y'all.
Yeah.
There were little cassettes, and you could do 2 tracks per side. I mean, you could use them all at once, and so you really only got one side of the tape to work on, because if you flipped it around, you just hear your other tracks backwards. So he sent me a 4-track tape with 2 tracks holding a stereo mix of this song they were working on, a demo of it, drum machine and all that. And so that left me 2 tracks to be able to come up with a solo and record it and send it back to him. And we didn't have the internet at this point like everyone has now. I think AOL existed probably, but people had dial-up. You know what I mean? It wasn't there were no cell phones, anything like that. So he FedExed me a 4-track cassette tape, and I got this song. It turned out to be the song Dogface Gods, and he told me where to play the solo, where to start, where to end, and so I came up with the solo, and recorded it right then, and onto 2 tracks because I had a harmony. So I did the main part, then I did the harmony part, and then I dropped it right back in a FedEx envelope to him like a day later, and he he was able to load it up on his end and listen to it, and he really liked it, fortunately. And it's actually almost note per note the exact solo that's actually on the album, because they liked it so much that they didn't want me to change it at all. They were like, yeah, just play it. You've already got that one written. Just play it, again in the studio. So that's what I did. And and that got me the actual audition. So then they gave me a big list of songs to learn, and I came out and jammed with the band, and I think I had like maybe 5 days or something to learn like 12 songs or something like that. And I flew out and did the songs with them, and I got the gig.
What was it like playing live with them, doing those classic songs, man? Did you get goosebumps when you were playing them?
Well, at first it's just sort of nerves, like, are people going to accept me? Am I going to? And so, and as you can imagine, I had that contingent of Alex loyalists that would come right up in front of me in the front of the stage, and they just stand there and look like, let's see if he can play this shit,
Yeah.
Let's see if he can do it. And sorry if I don't know the policy on 4-letter words, so I'll restrain myself.
No,
but,
you can say whatever you want to, dude.
All right, cool. Yeah, so, I didn't know how they were going to react. And, fans, especially the Alex squad, how they were going to accept me. And fortunately for me, I was able to win them over, by and large. I mean, I'm sure that there was the odd, years later I've ran into people like, oh, you played Decimate? Ah, man, I gave up on him after Alex left. I just, I wrote him off. So there's a certain amount of people that just wrote the band off once Alex left. But I think in large part, I was able to win over his fans.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, I know you've got a bunch of stuff coming up too, man. I know. You're doing some stuff with my buddy Carl from fucking Webb of Deceit and my buddy Jason from Becoming. I was laughing because both these guys were messaging you earlier, trying to hook up an interview with me, and I was laughing.
I'm so glad they did, because I got to tell you, I was confused about what day it was. I wasn't confused about what day the interview was. I knew we were meant to do this Friday night, but I was confused about what day it was. I'm sitting there in my recliner, kicking back after a long day, and I got animals laying on me. I got my wife chilling next to me. We're watching a show and dozing, starting to doze off and stuff. And Jason and Carl start messaging me. What's up, guys? And I thank them for that, because it made me wait. Okay, wait a minute. Today is Friday. So I jumped up and grabbed my phone. And fortunately, we were able to make it happen, and I apologize for almost missing it.
Yeah, I was laughing because they were both sending me screenshots where they were sending you stuff, and they were telling me, they're like, "Hey, man, he fucking," and I'm like, I was laughing because I'm thinking, he's probably wondering what the fuck is this Zach Moonshine guy? Why is everybody trying to get me to fucking talk to this dude?
No, I remembered. I just was in a weird daze where I lost track of what day of the damn week it was, because I was just so tired and chill, So for some reason my brain was telling me, oh, it's Thursday, but yeah.
Well, what other kind of stuff do you have coming up that you can tell us about?
Oh, well, man, I've played on a bunch of stuff recently. I wish I could remember it all off the top of my head. But I don't know how successful I'm going to be with that. But I think maybe if I plug in this hard drive, I might be able to just sort of have a little list in front of me, where I can sort of give you a little bit of a rundown. But I can tell you some off the top of my head. I don't know if you know Mike Rabovchuk from Azure Emote. He used to play in Monstrosity years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And but he has a project called Azure Emote, and it's just got a powerhouse lineup on that, much like Jason does on Becoming, including some of the same people, which would be like me and Andy LaRocque for sure. We're on both. I think we're both on Becoming and Azure Emote, and so there's the Azure Emote, there's the Becoming, of course, and there's the Webb of Deceit, and man, I don't know why I'm probably because I literally just woke up that it is difficult for me to
well, let me ask you,
remember everything.
For all the gearheads out there, man, myself included, what are some of your favorite go-to fucking things to use playing wise, for your tone and stuff, man? Your guitar, strings, pedals, amps, shit like that.
Well, I'm guitar-wise, I'm pretty eclectic in that I love a lot of the old classic stuff, Strats, Tellys, Les Pauls, things like that. I love those, and I'll always play those, and I have a scat of them. But what I mostly use professionally these days is either a comparison or a Kiesel. I've got a number of comparisons, and in fact, I think I got one strapped on right now. Yeah, this is my TAT special, TAT custom, rather. And right next to me, I got a Kiesel Vader. So I play those a lot lately. Those are the two that I use most during recording right now. So yeah, that's where I'm at guitar-wise. Amp-wise, when I use an actual amp, which is anytime I'm recording anything really, recording anything, like if I were going to, record rhythm guitars or something, I would almost surely fire up my EVH 5150 Mark III. It's one of the earlier ones, not one of the more recent iterations. And I tend to use this, it's the standard size Mesa, which is oversized compared to like a Marshall or most other brands. It's a little bit larger. Mesa 412. And, predictably, it's loaded with V30s, and I love those,
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so that's primarily what I'm using. Now, when I'm recording, I do a lot of my recording at home, especially doing, any sort of guest recording for people or session guitar work. I have I wouldn't really call it ampless, but it's speaker cabless setup where I'm going sort of direct into the audio interface. It is a tube preamp, and it's a full high voltage, multiple tubes, in the preamp stage, 12AX7s, and running at high voltage. That's important because a lot of pedalboard size stuff that doesn't have a power amp in it, that it's meant to go like in front of an amp or in front of a power amp, is kind of low voltage and it works more like a guitar pedal. This is an actual amp. It's the Friedman IRX.
Hell yeah!
It lets me have a full-fledged high voltage tube preamp on the front end, and then the back end of it provides an IR loader, which covers the impulse responses for the power amp, the speaker, and the microphone that captures it. And it captures all of that as an impulse response, and you can load any impulse response you want into it. It comes with a whole bunch of its own really good ones built in, and I'm just using one of those, I think. And if I recall correctly, it's been a minute since I set that up, and just direct in, and and I use a slew of other pedals along with it, sometimes in front of it, and some things are in the effects loop, and some things are set up both with a 4-cable method, depending on what it is. But I got stuff like KSR, Strymon, and Keeley, MXR, Digitech,
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, are you boosting before you go into the preamp, or are you just going straight in?
Yeah, I have I guess you'd call it sort of 3 gain stages. I have a Keeley Noble Screamer that I see sort of as my main overdrive. It's not set really heavy. I got it set up to be able to add stuff in stages so that it builds up. I'm already getting a lot of gain just out of the channel 2 of the Friedman IRX. It's already pretty chunky by itself. And then when you add in the Noble Screamer is basically a box made by Keeley that lets you have a Tube Screamer and a Noble's ODR1. In an Ibanez Tube Screamer in one box, but it lets you select. You can use the clipping circuit from one, and the tone stack from the other. You can mix it up, so you got 4 different sounds. You can go full Tube Screamer, you can go full ODR1, you can have ODR1 tone stack and Tube Screamer clipping, or you can have ODR1 clipping and Tube Screamer tone stack. You can flip, so you got multiple options there of what to do. I think currently I'm using the Noble's tone stack and the Tube Screamer clipping, I think. It's been a minute since I set it up. And I said, that's not set very, it's not cranked, it's just adding an extra level of gain to what's already there from the Friedman. And then I have an MXR Custom Shop / Analog Man Duke of Tone, which is essentially an Analog Man Prince of Tone in a mini package, a little miniature, compact size pedal, like what they would call a mini pedal, I guess.
Oh yeah.
And so it's just, which is basically like having, it's a very inexpensive way to get a King of Tone on your board, and it sounds very, very good. And once again, it is just adding, by itself, if I don't have anything else on, it just will bring you up to what you might call an edge of breakup type tone at most. When you combine it with the gain from the Friedman and what I'm getting from the Noble Screamer, it starts to really build. And then the final stage is just a boost. It's the Exotic Effects EP Booster, which I have set to the full vintage settings like David Grissom does, which probably not a lot of your metal crowd knows who the hell David Grissom is, but he's a blues guitar player and session guy that is phenomenal, really great player. And I read how he set his up, and I tried it, and at first I thought, man, this is really dark. It's just dark. But as I fooled around with other settings on the other gain stages, I started to really like it because it made it just really creamy sounding,
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. I don't have an IRX, but I do have the Tone X, and when I got it, that's one of the first captures that I downloaded was the IRX to check it out, the Friedman. And on the Tone X even, it sounds fucking amazing. So I can only imagine what the actual
yeah, man, it's a great box. It's a great box. It's a great amp. And it really is an amp. You can just plug straight into it and then just like take its output and run it into the return of any tube head you're using, so that you're just bypassing the preamp and going straight into the power amp, and it sounds phenomenal.
Yeah. I was watching a bunch of interviews with Dave Friedman when he put that out, and he was explaining like how he built it and how he put it together and made sure that it had, all the extra voltage that it needed to fucking push, just like an actual tube amp. And I thought that was really cool, man, because I know there's a lot of tube pedals out there, where it's just sort of like the tube is just sort of there, just to kind of give you the...
Yeah, it's like it's barely, you could stick your finger on it. But you can reach down and touch the tube, and cool to the touch. There's a slight little glow in there. A lot of times with those, if you pull the tube out, I mean, there's voltage passing across it, but it's so weak that the tube doesn't even get warm, and it doesn't even really glow enough. So a lot of companies that do this with low voltage with a 12AX7, they'll stick a LED behind it, like a red or orange LED behind it, to make it seem like the tube is really, this tube's really glowing, man. And it's just an LED light on it. Now this is full on high voltage, and they got those tubes hidden away from you. You can't touch them. You'd have to open it up, and and if you did that, you'd probably burn your finger. And certainly you would risk high voltage electric shock. It's the real deal in a very compact box, And I'm not endorsed by Friedman, I'm not saying this because they didn't give me this. I paid full price. So.
Hell yeah. Well, fuck yeah, man. All right, well, I guess I'm about out of questions for you. Is there anything else you want to let the people know?
Just man, I wish I could think of everything that I have played on recently, man. I've been on a lot of stuff this past, couple years, and it's like an internal suffering, Crypt Crawler, Just Before Dawn. I'm on the new albums of all of these acts, and more. So like I said, I do wish that I could remember them all, because I feel like someone whose project I played on is going to be listening to this, and I'm going to have forgotten them, and they're not going to be happy with me. Let's see.
Well, I think for anybody out there that wants to know, they could probably just Google search it and they'll find it.
Diagonal Path. That's another one that I played on, here recently. That I'm very happy about. A project called Cruelty Exalted, which I think came out really, really good. I'm on the new. I'm on 3 tracks on the new Embryonic Autopsy record.
Hell yeah.
I'm on a project called I think it's Another Demon. I think it's called. The band. I'm on the new Gravehuffer. I'm gonna be on the new Hazarat.
Wait, you're gonna be on the new Gravehuffer?
Yeah.
Holy shit, man! Fuck yeah! I'm good friends with those guys, man.
Oh, cool, right on. Yeah, I'm on a song. I'm on the recent Maimed record. Yeah. There's just a bunch. There's this Italian doom band, my buddy Marco Montagna, and he's gonna hate my guts, but I am struggling to remember the name of this actual band. This is the thing sometimes about doing session work. People send you stuff, and you get in contact with them, and I just end up knowing the name of the person who contacted me and the name of whatever the working title is of the file they send me, the track they send me to play on. Yeah. So that's all I have in front of me is the name of a person and a track, which often is named with a working title like, Submix 1 or, track A, crap like that, and so sometimes I don't even know the name of the song. And, of course I try to make it a thing to learn all of this stuff, but, to keep track of what I have coming out. That right now you caught me with my pants down, so to speak.
It's all good, man. It's all good. All right, well...
literally, for all you know.
Yeah. Well, James, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, man. I really appreciate it. And before I let you go, can I get you to make us a station tag real quick?
Yeah, sure, man. Absolutely.
Whenever you're ready, say something like, "This is James Murphy, and you're listening to Metal Devastation Radio."
Hey, this is James Murphy. You're listening to Metal Devastation. Oh, come on. I ran out of breath. Can you believe that? I learned how to speak many, many years ago. But somehow I just forgot to take a breath before doing that.
Take 2.
Hey, God damn it. Hey, this is James Murphy, and you're listening to Metal Devastation Radio.
Fuck yeah, man. All right, man. Well, like I said, dude, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play some more music from you to make these motherfuckers go crazy, all right?
All right, on, man. I appreciate it.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Later, pal.
Cheers. There you have it, folks. James Murphy from fucking Obituary, Cancer, Death, Testament, and so many more. Live right here on the Zach Moonshine Show with Metal Devastation fucking Radio. Hope you guys enjoyed that fucking interview. Coming up next, here's some more music from James Murphy, man. We got some Cancer, we got some Death, we got some Testament lined up.